So my name is Chandler Kellogg. I have a growth marketing and sales enablement agency called Hot Button IO. I've done some previous presentations on, kind of that full category through the SBDC. Robert could get those to you. But today the main focus is on the three types of SEO that apply primarily focused on small to mid-sized businesses. So going through kind of our outline that we're going to talk about today, going through an overall, just an introduction overview of what SEO is, and then kind of the three different types, which is on page, off page, and local, how to prioritize them for your own business, and then some tools to use to implement these yourself. And as I've done in the past with Robert, I'll make sure that everyone gets a copy of this as well as links to any of these tools if anyone wants to look into these and use these as kind of a shopping guide for their business or a checklist. So in the introduction, what is SEO? SEO is the process of improving a website's visibility on search engines to attract organic traffic. This is typically activities that are done, especially on the foundational level. It's done during your website development process. So you typically want to engage a website developer to build your website who is familiar with SEO. Not all people who develop websites are familiar with this. So a lot of businesses kind of develop a visually really impressive website, but they kind of neglect a lot of the SEO factors. And then so they spend a lot of money on this really well designed website that doesn't rank at all or isn't indexed and has a lot of these other issues. So you want to make sure either when you're building this website or if you've already have it built, this is kind of a guideline for what are you prioritizing aside from just kind of the look and feel of the website to help you rank better, have better discoverability for any of the products or services that your business offers. So on page, this is typically one of the things that's most in your control, and that would be most relevant for your developer, your IT department, or whoever manages your website. And then some of the other components are things that you could do yourself as a business owner or activities that help kind of build traffic to that website. So on page is basically everything that's under your control on your website, optimizing the elements within the website, which is content, meta tag, site structure, basically how things are laid out, and then the technical optimizations of your own website. So everything on that single property. Off page is external signals and links to your site. So basically everything else that is kind of driving traffic to that website that you're doing outside of the actual website optimization that help build the authority and reputation of your website. And then local is specifically if you have a business that serves anyone in a particular service radius, whether that be 5, 10 miles, 30 miles. Those are things that are important to set that radius on there correctly and optimized to deliver business, products, goods, services locally. There's kind of an entirely separate strategy that focuses specifically on local. So when you're engaging, either an agency for this or looking to optimize these things, you want to determine which of these three you need to implement and optimize for based on your own goals. So adopting these strategies can enhance your website search engine rankings and drive more potential customers to your business, but you basically have to figure out which one of these are you prioritizing based on the budget that you have and the customers that you're trying to attract. So on page, these are kind of the factors that go into it initially. Google has a large list of over 200 different ranking factors. So there's lots and lots of different ranking factors. So we're kind of going over some of the more high priority ones that you would want to focus on. So the name of the game is usually content creation, quality content creation, regularly kind of being the keyword there. Consistency is important if you're kind of trying to do this as a long-term strategy. You want to have a pretty regular publishing cadence, but not publishing content just for the sake of publishing content. So you want to regularly produce content that is also relevant, informative, engaging, that meets the needs and interests of your target audience. Part of the way that you do that is keyword optimization. So there's a lot of different tools that we'll go into later in terms of how you can actually pull what people are searching for, which keywords, what phrasing they're using, what types of questions they're looking for. But basically, once you have that list of keywords and questions and topics, you want to make sure your content speaks to those. So that's the keyword optimization, identifying and integrating relevant keywords and integrating them naturally within content titles and meta descriptions, which we'll go over meta descriptions a little bit later. One of the things that you don't want to do with keyword optimization is you don't want to do what would be called keyword stuffing, which is basically if I'm, say, a coffee shop in Charleston and I just write coffee, coffee, coffee a million times, Charleston, Charleston, Charleston a million times on my page, that is not necessarily integrating keywords that you're trying to optimize for semantically on the website page. So you want to make sure you are addressing the keywords and questions that people are asking about, but you're not just forcing that content repeatedly on each individual page. So you want to integrate those naturally, but you want to be aware of what people are searching for. Meta tags, this is probably the area that is the most difficult for a lot of business owners to understand or wrap their heads around it. I'll kind of go through some examples at the end to show people what these look like in the wild. But basically, any of the meta tag description is kind of helping search engines identify and structure the whenever they're parsing the content on your web page. So title tags, basically, when you look at the search results, that big blue text is your title tag, and then the smaller, like black text usually below it is your meta description. So that's basically a snippet of what this page is about. So this is, the title, this is what the general topic of this page is about, and then a short description. You have to write those yourself, otherwise Google will pull them dynamically, and it's not always pulling the information that you would like it to pull. So you want to make sure that you optimize those. And then header tags, that is basically creating the list structure for, say, a blog post. So H1 would be your title tag, H2 would be the first subheading, and then you can create subsequent subheadings below that. So if you're trying to rank for certain things and you have kind of a list format, being able to make sure that it has the right sequence of header tags is important. And you also want to make sure that those are descriptive and keyword rich. Image optimization, I would say this is the number one thing that a lot of businesses can get really quick wins on if they know what they're doing, or if they've hired someone that can help optimize this stuff. A lot of businesses don't understand image compression or different image formats to make sure that they're optimal for performance on their website. So the quickest win that I usually see with a lot of businesses is going through and just making sure that they have the proper image formats and that they're optimized and compressed to be delivered for the optimal website experience. And then beyond that, you want to make sure that they also have alt text, which is basically just a text description of the image. It's useful for accessibility, and we can go through tools on how to check all that stuff later. But image optimization is going to be one of the easiest things that you can get a high lift on pretty quickly for a lot of businesses. And then internal linking, this applies more if you have lots and lots of pages, like if you have a pretty big knowledge portal, or you have a lot of different blog posts and you want to make sure that people are visiting other websites or other web pages within your website if it's relevant. Internal linking is super important for that. But if you have a smaller website that's, say, under 25 pages, it's not necessarily as important. But that does get more important as your website grows, especially if you're trying to grow something like a blog. So some additional things that you would want to look into on the on-page side: responsive design. This is something that comes out of the box a lot. Like if you're buying a website that has a template, a lot of times there is some responsivity built into that. But I see something that a lot of small businesses do, especially if they build it themselves and don't hire a web development agency to do this, is they kind of build it and only check it on one device. So say it's optimized and looks fine on desktop, but it's completely broken on tablet, on mobile. Pretty much any website development platform will have an option for you to toggle through and see it on desktop, on mobile, on tablet. And the way that you do that responsivity is setting up breakpoints. So when basically an aspect ratio of a display is below a certain resolution, it will automatically switch to like a tablet or a mobile view, for example. So basically, all that you want to have in there is you want to make sure that your website is built to not only work well on desktop, but also mobile, because a lot of the indexing factors that Google uses, it actually prioritizes the mobile experience first. So if anything, you want to make sure that your mobile experience is super, super solid, even more so than your desktop to some extent, except maybe if you're B2B, you want to really prioritize those and make sure those are set up properly. Reducing load times is a big part of that. Compressing images, like I said, the number one way that you will improve your load times for the vast majority of businesses is going through and doing an image audit and making sure they are properly optimized, compressed, and in the right file format. That's going to be huge. And then beyond that, utilizing browser caching, minimizing code. Those are all things that might have some kind of a lift for your business, but typically, a lot of times I've seen with things like WordPress or Shopify, you start to get into the weeds with that, and you're usually trying to have to rip out or modify plugins to do that. So it ends up becoming a bit of a game of whack-a-mole. So I'd say the number one thing that you get to improve load times is having the right images, and we can go over how to do that later. Cross-device testing, that kind of goes back into what we were talking about. Make sure that if you're doing a website yourself, that you have the ability and have that in your kind of QA process that you are testing your website across multiple devices, desktop, tablet, and mobile, before you are launching changes to make sure that they are how you expect them to be. And then beyond that, one of the other things that can improve load speeds for a lot of different businesses, having a CDN, a system of distributed servers that delivers web content to users based on their location, ensuring faster load times. All that to say is basically, if you don't already have a CDN, you should check and see if it's something that would be worth investing in, especially if you already have poor loading speed performance. That is something that can help that without having to do a whole lot of other lift other than just adding it in there. And then these last three all tie in basically to the secure browsing experience. So HTTP, a lot of you are probably familiar with that. The secure protocol is something that you want to shoot for. HTTPS, that is the actual website protocol, but the secure component of that is either SSL or TLS. And not to get too much into the weeds on that, but basically you want to make sure that your site is secure. The easiest way to visually check for that is when you see your website and you look at the URL at the top, there should be on Google and a lot of other browsers a little lock icon next to it. And if that lock icon is not there, then you would want to look into resolving that, as that is a pretty major security factor. And a lot of websites like Google and Bing in certain cases will actually not let visitors access your website without issuing them some kind of a warning that it's not a secure site. So that's something that you really, really want to get sorted out. So images and HTTPS are some of the initial things that you really want to make sure that you get locked in before you kind of go down into lower priority items. Off page, backlink building is, I would say, it's an important activity to have backlinks that are returning to your site. I will say that there are a lot of agencies and service providers that this is a service that is difficult to outsource and pay for without a lot of times getting a lot of low quality links. So there are a lot of agencies that, if they're a backlink building agency, they'll say, oh, we'll go out and build you, X hundred or X thousand links. And a lot of them end up being low quality links from sites that are not related to basically the category that you're in. So backlink building, I think you should be aware of your backlink profile. You should be aware of where your traffic sources are. And when it's relevant, you should potentially try to build this backlink basically portfolio. But it's not something that I would say is super high priority for a lot of businesses to actually pay for this service if you're expecting an ROI on it, and to where it's not kind of an area where you can basically have a lot of quality issues. So I'd say be aware of your backlink profile, understand what it is, where you're getting traffic from, and look to acquire links on sites that are relevant to yours. But I wouldn't invest a ton of money in doing this manually, as if you're putting out a lot of high quality content, some of these backlinks will be acquired naturally. So another one that's pretty good that a lot of people do is social media, promoting content and fostering relationships on social platforms, driving traffic and enhancing brand visibility. Social media in all of its different forms can help increase traffic to your website. And a lot of those can increase, especially like in forums on things like Reddit. That's where you can get a lot of actual links directly to your website. So it's something, again, that's worth looking into, although I don't know that employing that specifically for the strategy of increasing your backlinks is not necessarily the highest ROI activity for a lot of businesses. So social media, that's kind of a whole separate presentation, but all I would say there is the objective for social media is really kind of brand awareness and either education or entertainment. So that should be kind of the focus on social media, but that is one activity that you can use to build your kind of off-page optimization and backlink portfolio. Same thing with guest blogging. Writing articles for reputable external websites to establish expertise and gain backlinks. So if there is something like, say, the New York Times or a lot of other websites, if you are a subject matter expert and you have an opportunity to create a post related to a topic for your business, and a lot of times you get author credits with a link back to your business or website, that is how you can build additional links there. It's a good strategy, although I would say, again, I would focus on building out your own content first on your own website natively before you're kind of exploring a lot of these activities. So off-page are, especially backlink building, it's something that you want to be mindful of. It's something that you want to be aware of, but it's something that I wouldn't necessarily spend a ton of money on or time on until you're kind of firing on all cylinders for a lot of the other categories, and influencer collaborations as well. Same kind of thing with like guest blogging. If there's an opportunity to collaborate with someone where they'll link back to you, I actually get invited to speak on podcasts fairly regularly. So that is an opportunity for me to not only increase the reach of my own business, but also to get backlinks from some of those posts. So when they post that, article on LinkedIn, or if they post it on their own website, if my website is linked there, if it's, Chandler Kellogg, Director of Growth Marketing, Hot Button IO, and that's a hyperlink, that's a link back to my website, which helps increase my authority. Additional things like we talked about earlier, forums and community engagement. Reddit especially is great for that, and various subreddits. So a lot of them have guidelines to where you can't be overly self-promotional, but it is an opportunity to engage with your audience without having to create all of that content yourself. So should be mindful to engage in forums and other communities if they are relevant to you, in addition to your own basically content production capabilities. Brand mentions, this is one that's really popular, kind of more on the social media side, but there are a lot of kind of brand listening tools or keyword listening tools where you can see where people have mentioned your brand. And then if those are mentions that do not have a link associated with them, sometimes you can get those associated to a specific page. So for example, if you have written, this is something that's really popular. Like I work with someone who does factoring as a business, which if you aren't familiar with factoring, that's where you can provide financing for an invoice that you haven't received yet, with some kind of fee. So if someone writes if you have a blog post about that and someone else mentions that you're an expert in that, you could say, hey, on top of, I appreciate this mention, but I've also written this blog post that touches on that topic. If that was linked in this post, that would be a good example of kind of a brand mention backlink that you can secure sometimes. Competitor link analysis. This is also something if you're looking for guest posting opportunities, or if you're looking for additional ways to drive traffic to your website, again, with some of the tools that I'll share at the bottom, you can pull competitor link analysis and determine where are they getting the majority of their traffic from. Say if there's some really good guide that they've written on Forbes that has driven a lot of business for them. Those are things that you would want to be able to identify and potentially replicate yourself if it's relevant. And I'll share some of those tools at the end for how to find some of those opportunities. Additional ones, and I think these are kind of more old school, and these are things that you should invest in if you have already kind of tapped your budget on, say, brand awareness or ad spend, and you wanted to experiment with some additional things. You can also do content syndication or press releases. So these are opportunities to amplify the reach of your content, although typically they are a little bit more expensive and don't necessarily have super high ROI for a lot of businesses. It can be a way to improve your backlink profile. So I would say a lot of these, after you've probably heard that, I would focus more on kind of the on page and then local before you jump into off page, because a lot of these you will spend a lot of time and money kind of chasing your tail on some of these opportunities. So these should all be things that you kind of have in your back pocket that you're working on building slowly, but that maybe shouldn't be the number one thing on your list for when you're trying to plan out your marketing spend for the year, for example. Local, I would say for any business that serves a local service radius, local is going to be the second most important, or the most important, sometimes even more important than your website, because a lot of people will be looking for local searches and will kind of call the first number without even going through the website. So I also have an electronics repair business, and at the end, I'm hoping that we'll have some time to kind of go through and I can show you what those examples look like. But this is something that you really want to have dialed in if you serve anyone in a specific radius, whether that be a couple zip codes, a city, a state, and you want to make sure that your service radius is set properly on whatever directory listing you're using. So the number one most important one for the vast majority of businesses is going to be Google My Business. Google My Business is a free tool by Google, allowing you to manage how you appear on search and maps. And what I have in parentheses there, it's most useful for proximity terms. So if anyone's searching for, in my case, phone repair near me, tablet repair near me, that near me component or that in Charleston component, Google My Business is almost always going to be the number one result for that. So whenever you're optimizing for or trying to figure out how am I acquiring customers that are looking for me locally, Google My Business is going to be the number one driver of that. And you want to make sure that your keywords and your categories are set up properly, as well as your service radius, to make sure that you are the number one or close to the number one result in the categories that you're trying to hit in the geographical radius that you serve. And we can kind of go through that in more depth if we have individual questions. But basically, three things that you want to kind of be aware of there, or at least on the category side. You get three categories in Google My Business, and you want to make sure that those three categories are not only the type of business that you get, but the type of business that you want. So for example, green screen repairs, I have it classified as a mobile phone repair shop, a computer repair shop, and then I don't even think I have electronics repair on there. And if you invert that and have electronics repair first, then I'll start to get people who are bringing in appliances, people who are bringing in other things that I don't service. I actually want to get more mobile phones because that's what my highest margin service is. So the category, not only the category selection, but the order in which those categories are is actually super, super important to the type of business that you will get on Google My Business. So we can dive into that later. There's tons of categories, but you want to make sure that you are very careful about the categories that you select and the order that they are in, because it will impact greatly the amount of business and the type of business that you will get. So Yelp, the difference really between Google and Yelp is that Yelp and a lot of other directory platforms are going to rank higher for the kind of comparison search terms. So if someone is looking for best X in Y city, that is usually Yelp is going to be the number one result for that. So when you're thinking about how to optimize these two kind of the highest impact listings, Google My Business is the people who are searching for X near me or X in my city. They don't really care what the ranking is. And then comparison shopping is Yelp. So if they're looking for best of, or best compared to other people, that's typically what those directories are optimizing for. And then likewise for industry specific directories. So that kind of ties in with Yelp as well. So beyond optimizing Google My Business and Yelp, you're typically looking for your top probably 2 or 3 industry directories. So if you have a software as a service tool, that would probably be something like G2. If you're a doctor, that would be something like ZocDoc. If you are an agency, that can be something like Clutch. Clutch is one to evaluate industry specific directories. So those would probably be the third category. And that's usually, again, comparison shopping type websites. So if I'm shopping for a CRM, and I want to compare Salesforce and HubSpot, I'm typically going to go to G2 for that because it has the breakdown of all of those. So those are the things that you're optimizing for based on how you're creating those profiles. And the other thing that a lot of these, the biggest thing with local optimization is making sure that you have NAP consistency, which is ensuring you have a consistent business name, address, and phone, and that it's uniform across all online platforms and directories. So typically I would say if you're a single location small business and you have not changed your name or contact information, you do not need to pay for a tool to do this. It's not really a huge lift. But if you have multiple locations, especially if you have a franchise, where you aren't necessarily always in control of all that kind of stuff and you have to enforce consistency, or if you recently changed your phone number, so like the CAN spam laws have recently changed in the US and I had to change my business phone provider, it might be worth it for me to pay to have that phone number update pushed across all these directory listings automatically to make sure that that's updated. But if you're a single location business and you haven't changed your name or your phone number anytime recently, you would just want to go through and make sure that it's there and that your profile is complete. And you don't need to pay to do that. So you really only would need to focus on Google My Business, Yelp, and then your industry specific directories. There are hundreds and hundreds beyond that, and that's what a lot of those tools push towards, is they push to basically hundreds of these completely irrelevant directories. You can do it if you want to, and again, you can do it if you have multiple locations and if you either frequently or have recently changed your name or business information, contact information, then you should probably pay for a tool to make sure it's enforced correctly, or at least identify which ones might not be correct. But otherwise, you can probably ignore that. You just want to make sure that it's complete and accurate. And then beyond that, the biggest thing for local businesses is reviews and ratings. So after you have profile completeness, after you have accuracy, the number one thing you want to focus on is building your reviews and ratings. And what I tell for most businesses is you can automate this. There are tools to do that, or you can just send it after your service is completed. So for green screen repairs, for example, I just have a real simple snippet that I can show you all that we could probably share and copy that I send to customers after a repair. And kind of that gentle push to get reviews is something that you want to invest in a tool, or either kind of do that manually. And I tell most businesses you want to shoot for each directory listing usually about like 50 reviews, because that's typically where you start to be resistant to the occasional negative review. And negative reviews, there isn't a whole lot you can do to remove or hide them. Most directory listings is about 50 reviews, because beyond that, you can kind of get them a little bit more passively and it doesn't matter as much. So in terms of how these rankings actually work, so if people are saying, oh, I want to figure out how I can improve my local ranking. So relevance is one of the things that you want to have, and that goes back to the category selection. So one thing that I see that a lot of businesses will mess up is if they're saying, oh, I'm not, ranking as high on certain search terms as I want to be, then I would say check your competitors' listing and what their categorizations are set to, and make sure that your categorizations are set correctly and that it accurately reflects your offering, and also falls within the search category that people are searching for, right? So if I was getting a bunch of appliance repair, I'm like, hey, I don't really do that. Then I would want to update my listings. Like another one, for example, I get a lot of people calling for home screen repairs because my name is Green Screen Repairs. And so people sometimes just say screen repair and they call them without checking the listing. So you have to be mindful of how the keyword searches can impact where you show up in the results. Distance, this is the number one thing, again, that I think is super, super important, especially if you're in highly competitive areas or you have a lot of competitors, is you want to make sure that your proximity is set correctly. So for green screen repairs, I only have a service radius of 2 zip codes, and they're both the zip codes on the peninsula, because there are no other repair shops in those 2 zip codes. So I could set it to a wider radius as well, but for those 2, because I'm the only one there, I am always the number 1 result for those 2 zip codes. So you want to make sure that you set that properly to the zip codes that you actually prioritize. And especially if you're more competitive, you may even want to optimize it to say, hey, I want to be, the number 1 result in these particular high impact zip codes, whereas other businesses might not have that set to their service radius. So those are easy ways that you can win. And you want to be mindful of where your service radius is, where people are coming to you from. And then in terms of prominence, so when you're trying to outrank people, you want to also consider these 2 things. So your offline reputation. So businesses with a strong offline reputation, like landmark hotels, renowned museums, those stand out. So in some cases, if you're competing with a brand that has a very, very strong offline reputation, they may still outrank you, even though they don't have the level of optimization on their profile that they do have. So some of these things are, if you have to figure out for the search terms that you're competing for, which are the ones that you have that are low competition or high competition where you can optimize for, because there are certain battles that you just aren't going to win. If you're trying to outrank Amazon or Walmart, it's not going to happen, right? So those are the things you want to evaluate in the search results pages. And then your online reputation matters as well. So these are the other things that you build in on the website. So your backlinks, articles, directories. So that all ties in to help your local ranking, in addition to the reviews and reputation, things like that. And so this local ranking system can't be influenced by payment other than ads. So if you're paying for a sponsored search result, that will get you to the top, but it gets you to the top artificially because it has a little ad or sponsored thing next to it. And so one thing that I will flag too, and I get these a lot on green screen repairs, is I get tons and tons of spam calls of businesses saying, your Google My Business listing has not been verified, or we're search listing pros, whatever. Ignore every single one of those phone calls. Because Google My Business, to verify your listing, all you do, you create the profile, they will mail you a postcard, you enter that code, and then your business's listing is verified. You do not need to pay any money at all for your Google My Business listing. Yelp has the ability to pay for like premium listing features, and they push those really hard. As soon as you create your Yelp listing, you're going to get calls from Yelp reps saying, hey, you want to do some ads, you want to do some profile enhancements. You can if you want to pay for those, but you do not need to. So if you ever get calls of people who are trying to push you to pay for these services, you do not need to pay for any of these unless you're paying for a third-party tool to help, manage, for example, multiple locations and listings. So that's the number one thing I would say is after they're verified, after you get that postcard from Google and you enter the code and it's verified, prioritization. So business location and service area, that's one of the things that I already talked about. You want to make sure that if you serve a specific region, that is outlined properly on your listing and set effectively to accurately represent where you can serve people. Because also if you have it set too wide, say you have it set to 50 or 100 miles and you don't go that far out, you're going to get inquiries from people who are not going to be very happy because you can't service them in that radius. So you want to make sure that you set that radius properly. For content quality and depth, you want to make sure that if you're producing a lot of extensive and high quality content, on-page SEO is going to help you the most there. So if you're trying to, write a blog or be someone who is a content heavy business, you probably want to invest more in on-page SEO than you do in some of those other categories. Whereas, business location and service area, if you're a local business, build a nice, well-optimized website, but you almost want to focus a lot more energy on your business listings more than the website to make sure, because that's what's going to pop up first. And then with your online competitive landscape, this goes into some of these tools that I'll show you at the end that can help you map this out. You want to figure out who you're competing with, because if you're competing in an area that has a lot of heavy online competition, off-page SEO can be one of the things that sets you apart. So you want to understand who you're competing with and how many people you're competing with, and what is the level of difficulty to figure out if you need to invest in some of those. Some are low priority items that might make the difference if you're in an area that is high competition and your competitors might not be doing it. So that's kind of the only area where it's worth it to go, kind of down the rabbit hole if you're in a very, very competitive niche and a lot of your other competitors might have things that they're ignoring. Target audience behavior. If your audience frequently uses local search or relies heavily on directory style platforms, looking into local SEO will do that. You want to be mindful of when you're getting customers in, and easy ways to just start asking them how they heard about you. A lot of people, the number one thing that I get is they're like, I called you because you were the first result on Google. But I have gotten people that have found me on Facebook. I've gotten some mail-ins from TikTok even. So you want to make sure that you figure out how are people finding you, and then also how do I want people to find me? Because one of the things is a lot of these listings enable you to have a lot of different inboxes. And so if you have an inbox on Google My Business and on Yelp, you want to make sure that those are connected and monitored. And if you don't want inquiries coming in through your Google My Business listing, you have to toggle that off, because otherwise it will negatively impact your ranking. If you have, the ability to say, hey, I want people to reach out for me for quotes on my Google My Business, but I don't respond to them, that's a negative ranking factor. So if you don't want people to submit them, then you want to turn that off. So you just need to make sure that you understand your target audience behavior and also your capability to serve inquiries on each of these platforms. And then evaluating your current online presence. So you want to make sure that you have a strong presence, and then figure out what else do you need to improve. And part of these tools that we'll go over in a second, we'll figure out what are areas of improvement and how to prioritize them. So tools that are free, these are ones that anyone can use that don't cost anything. Google provides a lot of them. So Google Lighthouse, I can go through and kind of do an example audit after this, but those assesses a website's performance, accessibility, SEO, and more, and it has feedback for improvements, although this does it on a single page basis. And so these you can toggle between your desktop and mobile experience to see which areas need to be improved across which platform. Google Analytics, probably everyone's familiar with this, but that's to monitor your overall website traffic, user behavior, and conversions. So that's actually for monitoring really any kind of activity on your website. And if you're running ads, that's where you can set up things like UTM tracking if you want to figure out where people are coming from certain campaigns, or you can map a pixel, for example, on certain actions. Is like, I want to figure out how many people from this Google ad click this button. Those are things that you would have questions answered on Google Analytics for. Google Search Console is basically a much, much more simple version of Google Analytics, and it kind of shows your website performance, which pages are indexed, and what you're showing up for. And Google Search Console is really important too. If you have a new website, you can submit your sitemap, which is basically just a list of all the URLs in your website, because Google will slowly crawl your website over time and it will rank. But a quick way to expedite that is you can submit your sitemap, which basically is a quick way to tell Google, hey, here are all the URLs on my website, so you don't have to find them yourself. I want all of them indexed. And Search Console is the best way to manage and fix that for free. And Google Keyword Planner is more built for their ad solution, but if you want to go and find keyword volumes and how difficult it is to rank for certain keywords, Keyword Planner is the way to do that. So in terms of non-Google ones that are also free and helpful, Ubersuggest is very similar to Keyword Planner. And Answer the Public, I want to go through at the end and throw a couple on here to show you how you might be able to use that. But basically, it shows what kinds of questions are people asking, because one of the biggest things that I hear from a lot of small businesses is they're like, I have an idea of maybe the first five or so blog articles, and then I have no idea what to write after that. And Ubersuggest, and especially Answer the Public, gives you a lot of ideas of what kind of can pick out to either write, SEO optimized blog content or even social posts and a lot of other things related to that. Paid tools. These are ones, if you're probably going to launch on a more comprehensive SEO audit, or if you're really kind of trying to build out your content strategy, these are tools that you would want to pay for. I would say the first one that I would start with personally would be SE Ranking. I've used every tool on this list. So SE Ranking is a cheaper SEO software suite that does the keyword tracking, competitor analysis, backlink monitoring, website audits. So if you want basically all of the SEO, just kind of like a quick one solution tool, SE Ranking is a good one to start with. Beyond that, SEMrush and Ahrefs are pretty much interchangeable. They're both SEO tool sets that have a lot more advanced functionality. Like if you also want to have some assistance with copywriting, if you want to evaluate, ad performance, PPC, social media, competitive research, those are kind of the two heavyweights, if you will. And then Moz is a good kind of like second or third tier solution that a lot of people use. It's somewhat better for some of the local search queries. So I would say SE Ranking, if you kind of want to get your feet wet a little bit, and then if you're really pushing to do a lot more blog content or really understand your competitive landscape, SEMrush, Ahrefs, and then the local focus or more indexing focused and tracking down much more specific technical issues, Screaming Frog is really good for that. And then this is some of my contact information at the end. So what I want to go through real quick is kind of show you some examples of those. Right. So when I was talking about those search result pages, for example, these are what we're talking about. So if I'm looking for a near me, like a proximity search, phone repair near me, this right here will show you what is the search radius. So this is for Charleston, South Carolina, 29403. So these results change based on where your location actually is. And again, like I said, green screen repairs, this is one of my other businesses. I've optimized it to specifically service basically these two zip codes. So whenever someone is searching in these two zip codes, I'm almost always the #1 result. And see how when I'm searching for this, this is the first organic result. It is not my website. It's my Google My Business listing. So if you have any near me queries, you're going to want to optimize this because the vast majority of people see this and they either call me or they click and get directions. A lot of them don't even click through to the website. And then going through Answer the Public often pulls from these questions. So if you're figuring out, what do I need to write content about, you can type something like, phone repair near me, and then you can scroll down and usually find what are some questions that I can write topics about for a blog post. And then, so this is actually the first organic result. It's CPR. But as you can see, like I said, even though they have optimized their website well to be the first organic result here, I still technically outrank them, and I'm going to get more calls for this query because most people are just looking for the listings. They're not actually looking for the first organic result. So when you're figuring out what you need to optimize for, you want to do some searches related to your own business and figure out, is this local pack showing up? And then, how should I optimize to get in the top 3 here? Because the first result is actually below the fold. You have to like scroll to even get down to it. Comparison shopping, like I said, if I'm looking for best phone repair, I'm not always necessarily going to be the first result for that. And that's partially because a lot of the first organic result is usually going to be directories. And then, like I said, usually Yelp is the #1 organic result for best of comparison type searching. And below that, it tends to be a lot of other more niche directories. So any of those comparison searching, that's typically what you're going to find, even though a lot of these are still going to be the local pack as the first search results. And then within Ubersuggest, so this is one of the free ones for the keyword searches. So if I want to search something like iPhone, you can go through and see how difficult is it to rank on a scale of basically 0 to 100. Paid difficulty, so this one's super difficult to rank for, and the cost per click, how much those clicks actually cost. And then answer the public. This is the one that I say is great. So if you're writing blog posts and you say, hey, I want to write about phone repair, but I have no idea what to write about, you can go through and see, you know, base by category. They group it by topic. So you can be like are, will, why, the different types of questions. And so I could say, who repairs phones near me? That might be a good one. How to mobile phone repair course. So maybe it'd be a good idea for me to make a course about how to do mobile phone repair, or any one of these, like what phone services Xfinity. Maybe if I wanted to write something about that, right? So these are good ways to find a lot of different topic ideas where you can combine one or more of these in addition to doing things like this, where you just scroll through and see others want to know, like, is it cheaper to repair a phone or get a new one? That's a perfect blog topic. So those are all things that you want to be aware of and tools that you can use to implement various SEO tactics. And I can open it up for questions now if anyone has questions or wants to kind of dive into a specific query.
Says, can you show what you mean to ensure security on the site?
So what you're looking for here, if you can see this, is right next to here, it will have this like an SSL or TSL certificate. And so when you're setting up your website, this can be something that you set up on like the DNS side through your domain registrar. So like GoDaddy through Namecheap or something like that, or potentially on the actual platform like Wix or Squarespace. Some of those actually manage that for you. So a lot of times you just need to look into your settings to find your option to add like an SSL, TSL, or HTTPS like certificate. And when it's done properly, it will show up as this little lock icon there, and you'll be able to like click in and see what certificates it has. So it's kind of it's a slightly more technical thing to set up, but the quick visual way to check it is if you go to your website and this lock icon is here and it doesn't have, it's not grayed out or has some kind of cross through it. That's how you'll see if you have that set up properly.
The next question we have, if you are an online seller, but mostly sell at a market every Saturday that is in a different county than your business, can you still get Google by business to that county, or does it have to be near your physical business?
So there's two things there really is if you are a business that doesn't actually have a physical location. So if you have a physical location, you can just ask for reviews to whatever your preferred physical location is. If you don't, you can set up a Google My Business listing that has a service radius. So you can set up a business that doesn't have a specific location, but it has a service radius, and you can set the service radius and just request reviews to that listing that's geographic specific. Now, if you want reviews that are not geographic specific, there's also a like Google Merchant Reviews program, and that's for kind of like online sellers. If you aren't location specific, so it's really up to you, and it depends on where you want those reviews to actually show up. So if you want them to show up in your business like at a glance, like those top 3 results, that's going to be either the Google My Business listing or that kind of like service radius, which is still a Google My Business listing. It just doesn't have the physical address. It says like based in Charleston, SC area or something. Beyond that, you'd be looking at like Google Merchant Reviews, which is kind of a separate thing.
So the next one we have, Chandler, is as a startup retailer, are there any tips to quickly increase Google reviews, or is it just a slow process trying to get early customers to review until hitting that magic number of 50?
Yeah, I would say it's really optimization of your kind of checkout flow. So typically, there, depending on the platform that you use and depending on how it's integrated, that's something that would be in either your POS system, your point of sale system, or your CRM system, your client relationship management system. So you can set it up as an automation a lot of times to where after someone, checks out, you can send them an invitation to apply or to write a review essentially. And so what I would say for a lot of businesses, the number one way that you can increase your review and reputation management is either pay for a tool or look or see if your POS system or your CRM system has the ability to set an automation to where it asks for a review after, say, like 1 day or 2 days after a successful transaction. I personally like having it sent manually because I myself prefer like to kind of hand select the people that I'm sending it to. But another option, and this applies to a lot of businesses like student housing or medical, if you have potentially a very high volume of reviews and potentially negative reviews that are out of your control. So like doctors, for example, I used to work with a lot of doctors, and they get negative reviews because like their insurance provider denies something, and that's not the doctor's fault. And so what they do, there are also tools where you can do a screening. So after, say, your visit, if you're a doctor, it says, hey, how was the visit? Rank it, 1 to 5. And if they submit a 3 or lower, it is handled internally. So it'll notify you, and it says, hey, you might want to make this right, basically, and figure out what went wrong. And so it gives that opportunity to collect feedback without pushing it to the directories. But if they leave a review that's, say, 4 or 5 stars, or even only 5 stars, you can have it to where it automatically prompts them to share that review to Google, to Yelp, to Facebook, wherever else. So if you're a business that has high transaction volume, like you're a restaurant or something like that, or hospitality, anything where you're servicing a high number of people, where certain factors might be out of your control that influence reviews, I would say you might want to look into review and reputation software that can both screen reviews and also help them be requested and published automatically.
So the next question we have is, can Chandler show examples of how he's used an on-page and off-page SEO on his website?
Yeah, so I can give you some examples of that. So going for like green screen repairs. So this is the Bing listing. So let's go over to Google because it's easier to parse. But so this is like my actual website result. This would be an example of like the local SEO, like claiming my Google My Business listing, and going through and optimizing, like, see my location. Like one of the things that I had to change is that I'm on floor 2, because a lot of people don't realize I'm on the second floor, so they get lost at the corner, right? And then any of the things that you optimize down in here, like writing my description, and it will also link your profile. So these are both kind of off page that I've created and claimed both my LinkedIn and Facebook pages, and those are linked back to my website. So those are easier ones. One of the easiest ways to build some of those rankings are just by claiming and optimizing your social profiles and your directory listings. So beyond that, you can do other things like I don't know if I can pull it up on the fly because I'd have to find it. But basically, like I said, for Hot Button, at least, I've done a number of different podcast episodes, and those people typically link back to my websites. And even Robert might know this, but for the SBDC, like if the SBDC publishes, say, a blog post that says I'm doing a webinar, that link would actually be a backlink back to my website. So those would be some examples of that. And then otherwise, like I said, if I was to go on and guest post on someone else's website, like another website that I have, for example, is a networking group that I'm a part of. It's called B2B Connect. So this would be, even though I'm in control of this website, this would be another example where they have a member directory and my website profile is linked on here. So like this profile has a link to my website. So that's like backlink building. So even if there's professional associations that you can be in, that's what I'm saying. Like those are kind of the easiest way to build those backlinks is professional associations, social profiles, and directory listings. Beyond that, maybe blog posting. Those are kind of the ones that you're looking into.
Okay, and the final question statement that I have is, I'm sending an email out a week after purchase linking. Oh, excuse me, my apologies. I got another message, so it cleared it.
I do have one that I would add that is super important if there's some people who are retailers or e-commerce, is Google has the ability to implement your shopping feeds, all right? So I can show an example of what that looks like and how to set that up. So
can I finish this one first, just for your opinion? It says,
yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sending an email out a week after purchase linking to where they can review in exchange for a Starbucks gift card. Like the strategy, or have any other good suggestions to increase likelihood?
So this is like kind of an interesting gray area, right? So Google and pretty much all of these directory listings actually explicitly prohibit, you actually are not allowed to compensate people for reviews, technically speaking. So if someone leaves a review and they mention that you gave them a discount or that you gave them some kind of incentive, that can cause your listing to be suspended, or in the case of Yelp, you can get your profile permanently marked that you manipulate reviews. So the true official guidance is you cannot provide any kind of incentive for reviews. The sort of gray area advice would be, do not be really, really pushy if you offer incentives. And if you need to, and if you offer incentives, like a discount or something, I would say just have it be like post-purchase. Try to avoid doing that, because again, if you have someone that says, hey, they were really great, but they were pushy and they gave me a discount for this review, that's going to immediately get your listing suspended in a lot of cases. So I would just be wary of that. And what I've seen works really well, especially again if you have more volume. Like, I don't ever incentivize for the reviews that I send out. I just send them out pretty much immediately after the transaction, especially for ones that went well. And you can occasionally have a follow-up. So I would say be cautious about that. And if you are incentivizing them, do not be pushy with it, because I've seen where people are pushy and they incentivize, and someone leaves a review that says, oh, they were great, but they were super pushy and they, like paid me $10 for this. That's a huge problem for you. So try to avoid incentivizing reviews if you can. And I think there was one additional question as well. So one of the other things that I was going to touch on too, if you're retail or e-commerce, submitting basically your merchant or product feed is going to make a huge difference for you. So one of the things, and I'll just be super quick about it. So when you are looking for something like, say, cat food near me, these shopping results, you have to actually create and submit your listing for this. You can do it through Google My Business, or you can do it in the Google Merchant Center, and there are other third-party ones that can push this as well. So like if you sell, say, on Google and on Amazon and on Walmart, there are tools like Feedonomics, as I know, that is one where they can help you publish, upload, and optimize these. This is super important, because on top of having your Google My Business listing and your website and having those indexed, you can either do this through schema, or you could submit your product feed on here. This will make a huge difference for you if you're a retailer or you provide any type of product or service, especially if you have it available locally. You want to make sure that you optimize these, because these can have individual reviews, these can have the listings, then you can click and get directions that way. And that's something that I see a lot of big box stores do and a lot of small businesses avoid. Like for example, if I have inventory for sale for phones, for phone cases, and I submit and list these, then I'm also getting everyone who's searching for not only my business or businesses in my categories. Like say if someone's searching for a vitamin shop, right, and I don't have my entire product listing up there, I'm only going to get people that are searching for a vitamin shop. I'm not going to get people that are searching for a specific supplement that I carry that's in my shopping feed, right? So that's a little bit technically complex to set up, but you can either do that in the Merchant Center or look into third party. But that's basically like indexing your product catalog. That's something that you want to have in there, because that will make a big difference for your business.
Chandler, can you please put your contact information up again for everyone?
Yeah, and I'll make sure that everyone has a copy of that presentation. I don't know if I exited out of it. I'll pull it back up for a second here.
Well, if you send me the presentation, I can certainly email it out.
And I'm happy also, like I don't charge for discovery calls or anything like that. So if someone wants to just book, 15, 30 minutes, kind of go over some of their, questions, concerns, see if it might be a good fit, or at least for me to kind of point them in the right direction, whether, they want to do it internally, use a contractor, use an agency, you can use my booking link for that. I prefer email or the scheduled calls on booking links. I can do phone calls as long as it's scheduled. So these two would be the primary options right here.
So we do have another question. Where do you submit your product feed to?
Yeah, so like I said, there are some third-party tools that can help you do that if you need to submit it to multiple places. So like if you're submitting it on Amazon and Walmart and Google, it depends on what you're trying to do there. But the Google Merchant Center is one of the ways to do that, which I can pull that up in a second here. This is one of the ways to do it. So if you look up like Google Merchant Center, And then it will have instructions on how to create your Merchant Center account and then create a feed. So that feed is what would display in those listings under there as well. So this is a whole kind of like separate thing that you have to create, and then also potentially add schema on your website to get pulled up in those listings. And again, if you sell products, that is going to make a huge difference for your business. That's almost one of the number one things I would tell you to invest in, aside from just the website and the Google My Business listing, is getting those feeds optimized and published. Because you can also, if you're running ads, which that's outside of the scope of SEO, but if you're running paid search ads and paid product ads, you need to have this feed ready to go to even run product ads. So it's something, if you have, inventory, I would definitely get that cleaned up and set up, and then figure out if you need to do it just directly through Merchant Center, or if you're selling on, Amazon, also on Walmart, also on a lot of different directories, you probably want to go for one of the third parties that will, optimize and submit it to all of those for you in one go. So it just depends on which ones you're trying to sell on.
And one last question. It is, what is alternate text on photos?
Yeah, so alt text is basically, it's more important for accessibility and screen readers. So if you are blind and you have assistive reading and you hover over an image or click on it, it will like read out a description of the image. So a lot of people never see these, but when you're uploading it on the back end, you usually have the option to name that picture, and that's where you would add the alt text. So it's just, all alt text is it's almost never visible, except for search engines, which is a lot of this, you're kind of giving Google information of how to rank you. So alt text is basically just how you label images. I would say it's something that you should be mindful of, and it's most important, again, if you are selling products and you want those products to rank. I would say if it's just kind of a decorative image, you don't need to worry about it too much. But to find out if those are missing or not, you can use Lighthouse, that free tool, or any of those paid tools, because the paid tools can do your entire site. So the Lighthouse is single page. So if you want a full audit to see where you're missing alt text across your entire website, that would be SE Ranking, SEMrush, or Ahrefs is how you check that.
Thank you, Chandler. If there aren't any other questions, we're going to go ahead and close for the day. It's 2:05. And I want to remind everyone to please respond to the post-event survey so I can send out any of the presentation, as well as the information to access the recording, which will be placed on the SC SBDC website in approximately 7 to 10 days. So thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to you attending another event, and have a good day.